black guy always dies first.
Brothers don't last long in situations like this.
All that challenge shit is over with. I'm the king now.
I saw Hamilton in London last week, and it made me feel patriotic. It made me proud to be an American. God bless America. God bless our troops.
And gentlemen, start your engine!
And then the next day, I saw Sinners in theaters, and it reminded me that I am Black before I am an American. Hi there, my name is Khadija, if you even care, and I need to talk to you about Sinners. This is going to be a completely spoiler-free review until a certain time point. So if you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing here? Yes, we do discuss movies when they come out. No one's gonna wait for you, but I will structure this video as spoiler-free and non-spoiler-free, because I also need to discuss the ending to really talk about the significance and impact of this film movie. I will also be talking about Get Out in its entirety, because that movie really did change the landscape of horror and thriller, and it all does go back to that movie, and I will not shut up about it. Future multiple Oscar-winning movie Sinners, which apparently in the past few days, they just instituted a rule that you have to actually see the movie you're voting on if you're voting at the Academy, which you mean to tell me, for the past however many decades, people were simply voting on movies they hadn't even seen? Because that explains a lot. Future multiple Oscar-winning movie Sinners was the kind of movie that you have to take a walk after to truly process. I very rarely enjoy horror movies because I very rarely feel like they have a point. For instance, I feel that Nosferatu was just an excuse to employ some, albeit very impressive, new techniques in cinematography, but the movie itself, we could have done without it. However, this one employed such a masterful use of symbolism and motif to reflect the innate duality of the African American experience and the Black diaspora that was so deeply rooted in Black history that it stunned me how good it was. The concept of race worldwide, not just in America, as there seems to be some weird complex about racism being an American thing, as if the Atlantic slave trade was not an international endeavor. That's why they called it the Atlantic slave trade, is a very layered one, as race in its purest form is a social construct, as Isabel Wilkerson argues in her book Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, in which she makes the fascinating connection between the racial hierarchy in America, the caste system in India, and Nazi Germany to illustrate this point. What we refer to as racism in America is in fact an advanced caste system, indicating that the difference is the modern-day version of easily deniable racism may be able to cloak the invisible structure that created and maintains hierarchy and inequality. But caste does not allow us to ignore structure. Caste is structure. Caste is ranking. Caste is the boundaries that reinforce the fixed assignments based on what people look like. The investment in keeping the hierarchy as it is in order to maintain your own ranking. Following the enslavement, genocide, and displacement of millions of Africans to the quote, New World, which in turn created many different diasporas, many tools were utilized in order to justify and maintain the validity of these deeply unjust and invalid systems. Tools that were so useful, they fundamentally rewired each and every one of our understanding of race until, for all intents and purposes, this make-believe thing became very, very real. Your perceived race did begin to define your life experiences, your culture, your opportunities, and your identity. And Sinners is set right in the heart of all this, in 1930s Jim Crow South. Beginning in the 1910s and going all the way up into the 1970s, something took place in the good old US of A known as the Great Migration. Following the end of the Civil War, which abolished slavery, the country transitioned into a period following the Reconstruction era, known as Jim Crow South, a period of very harsh laws of segregation that were believed to be more lenient in the North. So, many Black people began to leave the states that were formerly part of the Confederacy in search of a new life and opportunities. In Sinners, Michael B. Jordan plays twins Smoke and Stack, who left their home state of Mississippi and spent several years in Chicago. This being Prohibition era and their options being limited, they began to work for famous mob boss Al Capone. But this is only one of the many good-evil dualities presented in the movie, and it is not the first. The very first scene of the movie introduces us to the movie's most prominent motif: music. Music serves as a very layered symbol that is very intentionally chosen. We are told that there are such people with musical gifts that are so powerful they can breach the veil between the living and the dead, conjuring spirits of the past and the future, but also tempting evil. In that, this powerful thing toes the line between dark and light, saint and sinner. It's fascinating because music itself is a symbol of culture deeply within Black history, all over the world, which the movie does explicitly acknowledge, even mentioning griots of West Africa, which I really appreciated because I'm West African. For Black people in America, music can and has been a form of liberation, a tool of freedom within the tight bondages of systematic racism. Even in the time that the movie is set, slavery might be over, but our characters are still working in plantations. But how can this powerful thing also be a gateway to evil? Why make that connection at all? The answer lies in the allusion to religion that this motif also maintains, by representing the spirits and magic, which is something that is frowned upon across many different religions and cultures because it's considered to upset the balance of nature. It represents as well the potential of evil. Moreover, it is a reference to the cognitive dissonance that naturally arises from the choice of African American people to form their own communities and create their own cultures within the land of their oppressors, including adopting a religion that was specifically altered to justify their own oppression and making it their own. In Malcolm X's autobiography, as told to Alex Haley, he makes many explicit references to how he joined the Nation of Islam because he and his fellow brethren felt that Christianity was one of the many tools in the white man's toolbox. The Nation of Islam's version of Islam taught that the white man's Christianity further deceived and brainwashed this Negro to always turn the other cheek and grin and scrape and bow and be humble and to sing and to pray and to take whatever was dished out by the devilish white man and to look for his pie in the sky and his heaven in the hereafter, while right here on earth, the slave master white man enjoyed his heaven. To be Black in America, even today, is to constantly wonder how best to exist within your identity and serve your community while being constrained by so many forces of evil. It is to wonder how best to resist oppression. Is it even possible to fight without succumbing to the evil itself? It is to constantly rework your own morality when you find yourself forced into an impossible position, to toe the line between good and evil. And that is what this movie is all about. I can't help but think of Black Panther, which was also directed by Ryan Coogler and also starred Michael B. Jordan, which is a very overt reference to the controversial question of how we best achieve liberation. Is it with Dr. King's peace, represented by the Black Panther, or with Malcolm X's By Any Means Necessary, represented by Killmonger, Michael B. Jordan's character? It is an innate duality that seems to, at its core, erase any semblance of a notion between good and evil, because how can you fault the oppressed for simply using the tools of their oppressor? It's a very complicated question, and these films do a great job of presenting it. Sinners also stars Miles Cutton, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, as Sammy, the cousin of the Smokestack twins and our musical prodigy. It is his musical talents that tempt the evil right to their doorstep in the form of the, quote, white devils. And it is no coincidence that this occurs. It's simply a retelling of history. When the Smokestack twins return to Mississippi, they buy a barn from a condescending white man who promises that the Klan doesn't frequent those parts anymore, hint, hint, wink, wink, in order to form their own Black speakeasy. And it's full of love and light and community and culture until, of course, it all goes to hell. Literally, this is a horror movie called Sinners. But I absolutely love the scenes of the community coming together to enjoy one another after a long day within the long lives that they lead. I very recently read Cain, which was a book that was very prominent during the Harlem Renaissance. I'm from Harlem. I know I haven't mentioned it yet. And it's filled with short stories and poems about the South and the Black diaspora. It's not just about the South, it is the South, the original foreword of the book reads. And this movie brings me back to the images conjured by Cain of the Black Southern experience, of its pain but glory, its love but horror, its innate duality with which Black people were forced to make something out of, and they did make something truly beautiful. Another movie that so cleverly presents this question, watch the segue, of what it means to defy traditional standards of morality is Get Out. The psychological thriller triggered a new era with its fascinating portrayal of race relations in a post-Obama America. It's no longer an overt racism as we see with the Klan members and Sinners, but this very weird fetishization of Black bodies. The I want mixed kids, I love natural Black women, it all still denies Black people of their humanity. We were reduced down to our bodies for labor in the past. Our minds and our humanity were considered subpar and thus meaningless. And even now, with Black people having a strong presence in many sports, indicated when at the end of the movie of Get Out, Homegirl starts looking for her next victim in the form of college Black male athletes. Also, I have to say, I saw I saw that actress in a series of unfortunate events where she plays a very different character, and it really did throw my head for a spin. She played Rose a little too well. People still think of the Black body in a very overt and dehumanizing way. We are not treasured for our intelligence, for our humanity, for what our minds can do, but for what our physicality can do, what it presents. And that's why the white family in Get Out has no problem removing Black people from their bodies in order to claim it for their own. Because they have this idea of Black people that champions our physicality while ignoring our souls. It's sick. Like, yeah, I bet you did vote for Obama both times and would have done it a third time if you could. You want to be him. Now we are getting into spoiler territory for Sinners. You have been warned. I don't want to hear nothing. I want to talk about Haley Steinfeld's character, Mary. I found her fascinating. I found her saying she never wanted to be white incredibly interesting when Sammy asks her, "What are you?" Clearly asking about her race, as it is clear by this point that she has a history with the twins, and she mentioned that her mother did help raise them, but she looks white. She responds to Sammy that she is a human being. Sammy apologizes, and she responds that she knew what he meant before proceeding to answer. Having grown up being part Black herself and being raised by her recently passed mother, who was raised by her own father to keep the Klan from killing her, as her father was a half-Black man. This is what she says to little Sammy, what she calls him in the movie. She grew up with the Smokestack twins and was romantically involved with Stack. She is a woman with a unique understanding of race, as she exists within two different worlds, never fully being able to cross into either of them, and she's in pain. Because she is in pain, she is the first of them to be turned by the vampires when the white vampires come, tempted by Sammy's music, which they make very clear to him, just as his father warned him would happen. I also think it's significant that she was the one to ultimately lead to their demise, because it goes to show that at the end of the day, even your own people will take the opportunity to turn on you. Another thing I found interesting is how the white Klan members, who were the first two to be turned into vampires, had no trouble allowing the first white man, Remick, into their home simply because he was white. He weaponized their own racism against them, claiming that he was running from the nearby indigenous people who were harming them, and they had no trouble believing that because they already believed the worst of indigenous people. In the end, that ended up being their demise, because when the indigenous people came to warn them, they didn't care. But poor Mary attempts to use her status as a white presenting woman to get in with them, learn their secrets, and unfortunately that leads to her demise. White people, they'll take every last one of you down with them. Smoke and Stack are also very interesting in that they are so different. Remember, the name of the game is duality. One wears blue, the other red. One is serious, the other is a bit of a jokester. Smoke says in the very beginning of the movie that Stack does not know how to watch himself, and it's only a bit of a surprise when he is the next to go preyed upon by Mary. Now, the movie starts off with a flash forward to the morning after the events that it actually covers, showing Sammy entering the church with what's left of his guitar, covered in blood and claw marks on his face. I have mixed feelings about this flash forward. I wish I hadn't known that Sammy was going to be the only one to survive the night, because it would have added to the suspense and to the stakes. But I do get the point of this scene to establish the role of religion in the film and to make the connection between music and evil. So at this point in the movie, I do know that Sammy is going to survive, and we can also assume that everyone else is going to die, which they do, including Stack's lover Annie, with whom he had a child, who he stakes through the heart after she is turned. Now, she I also find very fascinating. Clearly, she's meant to take the role of the Black maternal caretaker. She is actually the one who realizes they're being hunted by vampires. I have seen some discussion about how she's the Mammy character, and I feel the need to specify that that's not what a Mammy character is. I have a whole video about this actually. But Mammy comes from the character that Hannah McDaniels played in Gone with the Wind, and it specifically refers to Black women who work as caretakers for white families. That's not what Annie was doing. She simply was representing the dependency upon Black women in the Black community for survival, for comfort, for care, which I think is a very important thing to acknowledge. It's Annie's quick thinking and her knowledge that manages to protect them for a few moments, at least. It goes to show that Black women are pillars of the Black community, that they are meant to be strong and make sacrifices, and she makes the ultimate one with her life. And the fact that Stack was the one who had to make that final decision was absolutely heartbreaking after they've already lost a child together. I also think the death of all the female love interests is a reference to this complex and unique romantic need of men to lose themselves within a woman but also maintain dominance, which ultimately weighs most heavily upon the woman. We are the weight bearers of the community. It all ends up being our burden. Stack also unfortunately dies, but not because of the vampires. He makes it through the night, but remember those clan members that allegedly don't exist? They were planning on hate criming the barn after the twins bought it. So when they come to finish the job, we get my favorite scene in the entire movie. Michael B. Jordan takes a machine gun to racist white people. I was in my seat going, get him, get him,
Get him!
it's interesting because you could call it self-defense, but it is ultimately a moral conundrum. What is the right thing to do in this situation? And I'm so happy that he chose this route. I remember that scene of Jamie Foxx whipping that slave master in that one movie. A lot of people were quite happy because it was genuinely refreshing to see survivors of abuse, particularly survivors of oppression, not taking the high road and not doing the right thing, but saying, you do not get to decide what the right thing is anymore. I do, in enacting vengeance. The same thing happens at the end of Get Out. It's liberating, genuinely. Now, Sammy surviving and still choosing to play music. Now, Sammy surviving and choosing to continue to play music after all the havoc that he saw it wrought is a very interesting choice that I think is most clearly explained in that scene at the end of the movie. He, at this point, has made a career out of playing music. And he says that that horrid night, which he has nightmares of several times a week still, that night before night fell was the happiest he had ever been. This music may tempt evil, but it ultimately is his escape, his liberation, and he cannot continue to be a slave to his circumstances, a slave to some false sense of morality that has never served him. He needs to be free, even though he knows what it means to accept that choice. Those vampires were specifically drawn to them because of his music, like we are told right at the start. And his music has the potential to produce visions that could allow them to see their loved ones who have passed on. Specifically, that's why they went after him. Yet, Sammy does say no to the ultimate test when Stack returns at the end of the film and offers to turn him. He decides to keep his humanity, even though it comes with pain, as he chose to keep his guitar, even though every time he plays it, it must have brought him right back to that night, because only by tiptoeing, tethering the line, straddling even, between good and evil, pain and solace could he truly feel alive. Also, reading about Ryan Coogler's personal connection to this movie, it's about his culture, his history, it's a dedication to his last uncle. He sunk so much of himself and his story and his family into it. It was his way of saying goodbye to his late Uncle James, who loved this kind of music and was from Mississippi. And his aunt was actually the namesake for Sammy. It makes it all even more special. Well, that is going to be it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think. I speak English down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.